Introducing Jaguar Gator 7, an all-new channel breaking down the history of Major League Baseball. Announcement video drops February 13th, with the first history video dropping the next day on February 14th at 6 p.m. Eastern. Click the card in the upper right corner, or click the link in the description to subscribe to the channel now. And now, on with our feature presentation. January 7th, 1979. We're live at the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum for the NFC Championship between the Dallas Cowboys and the Los Angeles Rams. The stakes for this game are simple. The winner goes on to the Super Bowl to compete for a shot at football's greatest honor, a world championship and the Vince Lombardi Trophy, while the loser goes home, with their season coming up one game short of the biggest stage of the season. For the Rams, if they win this game, then they go to their first Super Bowl in franchise history. However, for the Cowboys, if they win, then their dominance as the clear-cut #1 team in the NFC throughout the 1970s continues, as this will be their 5th Super Bowl appearance in the last 9 seasons, and their 2nd straight after winning Super Bowl XII the previous year, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. The country was watching this game between the undisputed heavyweights of the NFC throughout the entire season. The two teams were quite literally the only two teams with a positive point differential in the conference. They had the top 2 offenses in the conference, and the top 2 defenses in the conference as well. So this was shaping up to be a good one on paper. At the very least, it couldn't be any worse than the AFC Championship earlier in the day, which the Pittsburgh Steelers won 34-5 over the Houston Oilers. Right? Oh boy, not quite. I mean, technically, it was better, but that's like saying that listening to Disco Duck once is better than listening to Disco Duck 10 times in a row. It's still not good, and while one is technically better, you wouldn't wish either on your worst enemy. Because when all was said and done, the Cowboys won this one rather convincingly, taking it by a final score of 28-0. After a scoreless first half, it was all Dallas from that point on, as they forced 7 turnovers, held the Rams to just 81 yards rushing on only 2.6 yards per carry, and held the Rams, who were the 7th best passing offense in football, to absolutely nothing in the air. Combined, both Rams quarterbacks went 14 for 35, completing a mere 40% of their passes, with Vince Ferragamo throwing 2 interceptions and posting a passer rating of 32.8, and Pat Hayden throwing 3 interceptions and posting a passer rating of 9.9. Both of these ratings are worse than if you did nothing but spike the ball into the ground on every single play. To win a conference championship is one thing. That's impressive by itself. To shut out your opponent, which marked the first time in the history of the NFC Championship that a team got shut out, is something else entirely. Long story short, it was a thoroughly convincing and dominant win by the Cowboys, as they advanced to yet another Super Bowl and set up a battle at Super Bowl XIII against the Pittsburgh Steelers, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. However, while there was a significant lack of drama on the field, simply because of how ugly this game was and how the Cowboys were in complete control for just about the entire second half, that's not to say that there wasn't drama off the field when it came to the broadcast of this game. Because, oh man, when I say that CBS came under fire for something that they did, where they blatantly lied to their viewers and misrepresented everything regarding their broadcast, I truly mean it. Today, more than 40 years later, you might not remember this incident at all. But if you were a die-hard fan of the show impacted by this, then you definitely remember where you were when CBS lied to your face during and after the 1978 NFC Championship. Because this is the story behind one of the biggest broadcasting controversies in the history of the NFL on CBS. Before I talk about what CBS did and why it caused such an uproar, we need some context to understand the original plan for the CBS Sunday lineup after this game. The year is 1979, and honestly, CBS is kind of struggling when it comes to polling and ratings, having fallen well behind ABC in terms of dominating the Nielsen ratings to a distant second. However, if there was one night during the 1978-79 season where CBS still had a firm grasp on the American television viewing public, it was Sunday nights. Because on Sundays, you had 60 Minutes, followed by All in the Family, and Dallas. However, sandwiched in between that lineup, at least on this day, you had the show that you've been watching this whole time. You had Alice, which was a rating success, being the highest rated program on TV on Sunday nights at 8:30, and ending the year with a Nielsen rating of 23.2, being the 13th ranked program in the country, ahead of shows like One Day at a Time, every network's movie slot, and Monday Night Football, just to name a few. The show centered around a girl named Alice, played by Linda Lavin, who worked at a diner in Phoenix, Arizona. And almost immediately, the show found a following. When season 1 premiered in 1976, it was one of the top 30 shows in the country according to the ratings, and by a fairly comfortable margin, was the most successful new show that CBS had. That TV season, CBS had dud after dud, as their accuracy rate was about as successful as a drunk stormtrooper, with just about every new show that they aired, from Executive Suite to Nashville 9-9 to countless others, making no dent in the ratings and being canceled after one season. But not Alice, because with Alice, CBS had a genuine hit on their hands. The show was the 8th most watched show in the country during season 2, and in season 3, their Nielsen ratings stayed exactly the same. In other words, Alice was showing no signs whatsoever of slowing down. And after the show's winter break, Alice was set to resume right after the NFC Championship in its usual time slot with a new episode titled Sweet Charity. The full episode of the show, for those wondering, is available on YouTube, completely free to view. The premise behind the episode was that Alice had 2 tickets to a celebrity charity ball, and she had to decide who to get the tickets between 3 people, Mel, Flo, and Vera. 3 people and only 2 tickets? Shenanigans ensue. This is your pretty standard sitcom plotline. It feels like every sitcom has an episode like this somewhere in their catalog, where someone's got to decide who to take somewhere and has to make a tough decision. The episode received positive reviews and was highly anticipated, with one writer previewing the episode by saying that thanks to Alice, the primetime slate for CBS on the night of January 7th was going to be one of the heaviest nights for TV viewing. Now, some reports indicate that Alice was just going to be a rerun that night, while others indicated that it was going to be a brand new episode. So take that as you will, as there were conflicting reports. But with that, the primetime stage was set. After the NFC Championship game ended, following its start time of 5 o'clock Eastern, you would get 60 Minutes, then All in the Family at 9 o'clock, then Alice at 9:30, and Dallas at 10 o'clock. However, you might have noticed a problem with the way that the schedule was structured. And that's the fact that this is completely reliant on the fact that this game takes 3 hours to complete. Not just that the game takes 3 hours to complete, but that this game, which is the NFC Championship, takes 3 hours to complete, which includes player introductions and a bit of a later start time than what was advertised, the possibility of overtime since this is a playoff game, and most importantly, and relevant for our purposes here, everything that happens post-game with regards to post-game analysis, interviews for the winning team, which in this case was the Dallas Cowboys, and a wrap-up thanking everyone on the CBS team, since this was their last game of the season, as NBC held the rights to the Super Bowl. The odds that this broadcast was going to be done in 3 hours were about as good as the odds of Mongolia hosting a Super Bowl. Basically non-existent, and you're crazy if you bet on that. There was no way whatsoever that this broadcast, considering everything that had to be fit in, would be done in under 3 hours so that everything else could start on time. This isn't even hindsight. It's not like CBS allocated enough time. But if there was a weather delay, or the game went into double overtime, or there was an injury where the player was down for 10 minutes and play had to be paused for a substantial period of time. Anyone with a brain, and anyone who knew how football worked, could have told you that this game was not going to be done in under 3 hours. Heck, here's an article from 1979 that said that NFL games took 3 hours to complete. This was not rocket science. This was not unforeseen. Apparently, everyone except for the CBS executives knew that 3 hours was cutting it awfully close. But not only did that not stop CBS from putting Alice in the TV guide, because CBS promoted Alice during the game, both in commercial packages and on the air. This is what aired during many of the commercial breaks that CBS had during the NFC Championship.
Sunday, CTV's most popular show, 60 Minutes. Then on All in the Family, Archie's Bar gets hit with some bogus money. And Vera gets ESP on Alice.
And if that wasn't enough, in the fourth quarter, so well into the game when we all knew that it wasn't ending before 8 o'clock Eastern, Pat Summerall, the legendary announcer for the network, did a read promoting the Sunday night slate of programs. And this is how the read sounded.
Tonight on CBS, 60 Minutes, All in the Family, Alice and Dallas. 60 Minutes visits the country music capital of the world, Nashville, Tennessee. And All in the Family has Edith losing her voice, and then Vera loses her man. And Alice, I don't know which is worse.
You heard him talk about Alice. You saw Alice on the TV screen. You even heard a bit of banter about Alice. I think all the evidence quite clearly pointing to the fact that after this game, Alice was going to be shown. So imagine everyone's surprise who was looking forward to watching Alice, and potentially, depending on what report you read, an all-new episode of Alice, when after 60 Minutes aired, and after All in the Family aired, there was no Alice. They just cut straight to Dallas out on the East Coast, completely skipping Alice so that the news could be shown on time. Now, there were quite a few solutions to the problem at hand. The first solution was to show Alice and just delay everything. You can delay the news by half an hour and just push everything back. The second solution was to realize that the game would not be over in time, realize that you had to cut a program, and decide that the program would be Alice, which means that you just don't advertise that program that week, and announce that it will return next week. Yeah, that hurts the fans of the show, but at least they know in advance, and you don't give them false hope. And it's not like you're screwed if the game does end early, because that just means you can show more commercials in the programs in prime time leading up to the news. Or you could just extend the news a bit. The third solution was, if you were still too stupid to realize that this game was not ending in 3 hours, considering the fact that it's a conference championship game with post-game coverage and all of that, and was going to take at least 30 minutes more than you initially thought, to announce over the air that Alice would not be shown on the East Coast, or to run a ticker at the bottom of the screen announcing that. But to do this, to show promos for the show during commercial breaks, to have Pat Summerall do a live read on the air in the fourth quarter, and to not say anything, and then, once the time rolled around for Alice to air, to not show Alice, and give no warning beforehand? To disrespect your viewers and their precious time on a Sunday night like that? That's just terrible all the way around. And the backlash got so bad that CBS had to put out a statement explaining why Alice wasn't shown, because the switchboards were getting lit up across the country. Bernice Green said that the reason that the program was cut on Sunday night was because the game lasted half an hour longer than expected. Granted, no one pressed her or anyone at the network as to why they thought this broadcast was going to take just 3 hours to complete. It's like if I tell my girlfriend that I'm sorry I missed dinner, because I was at the baseball game, and the game ran longer than I thought it would. But I only allotted 90 minutes for the baseball game, as if any game could be completed in an hour and a half. A different CBS spokesman then said that the reason that promotions were shown for Alice, even though it was never shown, was because all the promos were packaged together. And because of that, when an ad for one program ran, an ad for all of them ran. In other words, if there was a 60 Minutes promo, an Alice promo would appear after that, no matter what. But again, that doesn't explain why Pat Summerall said on the air that Alice was going to show. I get that there might be some technical difficulties and complications with removing an entire promo off the air and cutting it midway through, especially back in 1979. But there's no technical difficulties at all with just telling Summerall not to say that Alice is coming up after the game. This statement that CBS put out was absolutely laughable. It deflected all responsibility and did nothing to stop those who were already infuriated about this from complaining even more, and rightfully so. On the bright side, at least they didn't cut to an episode of Alice midway through, so they have that going for them at least over NBC, which you can learn more about in their disaster with Willy Wonka by clicking the card in the upper right corner. This entire debacle when it came to the broadcast of the 1978 NFC Championship is a great reminder of what not to do. Always prepare for football games to run long, especially longer than 3 hours. And then, from an ethics standpoint and a morality standpoint, if you are going to cancel a show for that week, don't run promos for the show. Don't announce that you're going to be showing that show, and don't leave people completely in the dark and confused once they realize that the show isn't airing. Literally everything that CBS did here, every single decision, was the wrong thing and the wrong decision. It's almost comical how badly they butchered this, and how horribly wrong they got their entire decision-making process down. Because on this day in 1979, the only people who had it worse than Rams fans were the fans of Alice. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, and subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL Trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at Jaguar Gator 9. To see college football videos, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.